The service that you provide has to be holistic. And what I mean by that is it can't actually just be about the money and it can't just be about the finances. What we have found is that the expectation of the investor is such that they want you to actually be their coach. They want you to almost be their therapist on things that are important to them. And that could change for every investor.
Welcome to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the podcast for the future of wealth management. Thanks for being here. I'm Marla Sofer. Money is a tool. It empowers people. Let's dive into how technology is personalizing advice, strengthening connections, and creating lasting impact. If you're an advisor looking to differentiate, a fintech leader shaping the next wave, or a client ready to take control of your financial future, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello and welcome. Abby Salameh is one of the most influential voices in wealth management marketing, with a career dedicated to helping advisors grow, differentiate, and thrive in an evolving industry. As Chief Growth Officer at RFG Advisory, she is leading the charge in empowering independent advisors to build strong brands, deepen client relationships, and embrace the future of financial advice. From her leadership at Hightower and other top firms, Abby has helped countless advisors tell their stories, stand out in competitive markets, and create real business impact. In today's conversation, we're going to explore how branding, storytelling, and trust building are evolving in wealth management and how advisors can attract and retain in a digital-first world, where the industry is heading next. Abby, I'm so happy you're here. Welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a delight. So you and I met, I think, at Tiburon maybe last year. I think we've crossed paths a couple of times. I've been following along with all the work you're doing at RFG. It's an exciting time in wealth. And our first question on the podcast is always, what excites you about the moment we're in right now?
I think the moment we're in right now is just so exciting because of two things. One, the number of people in this country that require wealth services is increasing. And at the same time, the number of advisors in the industry is actually decreasing. So we have this unique opportunity and this intersection of time where we need more financial advisors to serve the needs of the growing population of those that really need the assistance.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's so wise. I just read a stat that 100,000 advisors are going to be retiring in the next decade.
Which is insane.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge, and we're just not raising more people up to be financial advisors, despite all the efforts that I think that are being done out there.
Yeah. I'm curious to dive into that, and I'm curious to learn more about the efforts that are happening. But before we get there, let's learn a little bit more about you and your career journey. You have spent decades shaping marketing strategies at top firms in wealth management. What inspired you? So when you think about bringing people into this industry, what was your inspiration?
It's so fascinating to think about it, because it has been, I would say, 30 years that I've been in this business of supporting financial advisors and the wealth management business, with everything from, being on the founding team to launch Investment News, to being one of the first at TD Waterhouse when we were a fledgling custodian. And then, as you mentioned, on to growing and building giant RIA firms in the industry. And the one thing that I think always came and rang true to me was the fact that I just loved the services that financial advisors deliver to their clients. It's a noble industry. There's nowhere else that you can find the ability to make such a strong impact on somebody's personal life than to help them with fulfilling their financial goals and dreams.
I love that. So it is the impact of the business that's kind of brought you here and kept you here.
It's been a total, and this particular phase in life and this chapter right now is a total impact mission. On a mission to help independent advisors be fully supported so that they may go out and help more people.
So that's a great transition to our next question. So when you're thinking about helping advisors and the impact mission and thinking about how they're reaching out to explain the value of what they're doing to markets that might not have the right access, or like traditionally, a lot of advisors have relied on referrals. How are you helping them tell the story of the impact that they can create in prospect lives? And what have been some of the misconceptions when you think about branding and advisor branding, the story they tell about themselves and their service? Where have they gotten it wrong, and what does the future look like?
So I think I wouldn't say that they've gotten it wrong. I would just say that they haven't necessarily gotten it fully right. And, with regard to branding and brand awareness, it's as much art as it is science. When you think about a brand, it should connotate some emotional response in how you think about a brand. And part of the problem is that I don't think advisors have necessarily figured out how to clearly articulate what their brand is or why they chose the brand that they did, which is something that I feel super passionate around helping advisors do when they go independent specifically and have to come up with their own brand. But then the other part of it is just getting their brand out there to be known. So, most advisors grew their business through the traditional method of referrals. And I will say that that method is still hot and strong, right? Many financial advisors are still building their business using a referral network. But what's interesting now is that if you couple the referral requests and make it very intentional, so having an intentional referral program rather than just an afterthought when you're meeting with your clients, if you have an intentional program in place for asking for referrals, for following up after a referral is made, it impacts the ability and the velocity of bringing referrals on board. At the same time, you need to focus on other strategies that are non-referral generated, that are client acquisition, so to speak. And one of the things that we love to do here at RFG with helping advisors with their organic growth, which is how we think about growth from an advisor's perspective, is really building all these multi-channel ways that they can reach their prospects, whether that's through digital marketing, social media marketing, webinars that are promoted via social media, email marketing. And believe it or not, in-person events still holds a really strong result for driving new business. So, we've seen our advisors host events that we help them host on things like, and this with the behavioral finance lens, like, it's not about the money. It's about the emotional side of the money. So it's all about the emotional aspects of wealth transfer. It's about, thinking about things that are beyond the spreadsheet and really getting into things that connect people to people, which are emotions. So those are the types of events that we're helping our advisors create. And those events tend to drive some really good responses from a client acquisition standpoint.
Yeah, there was a lot there, and I think I can stitch it all together. So first, you started off by saying, a lot of advisors struggle a little bit in articulating what their brand really is. And then you said referrals are really strong, but they need a lot more intent. And it sounds like what the approach here is, how do you operationalize making referrals happen? And it sounds like part of that is knowing how to help clients help you. And maybe it's also partly being a little bit more deliberate about the selection. Who do you want to be referred to you? And then you talked a lot about the marketing, different channels. There's kind of organic growth. Part of it's through the referral program, but definitely there's also beyond that when you think about marketing, social email events. So I want to come back to the first part of that answer where you said helping an advisor really understand what their brand is and really creating that narrative for the advisor that then gets shared as they're looking at referrals, as they're looking at growing through these multi-channel marketing engines. When you think about how they're telling their own story and connecting deeply, it's part of what you were talking about with respect to the events and behavioral finance, what the money's really for. What are some of the things that you found in your career at RFG or elsewhere that helps the advisor really express their brand to drive their growth, to find that narrative that's affecting the impact to their prospect. So their prospect understands, no, I get it, that you understand me. You're giving me the value I'm looking for you to deliver.
So we go through vision casting exercises all the time with our advisors. We help them sit down and think through what is the vision for the business that you want to build, and what are the services that you want to deliver, and what is important for you to understand that you want your clients to understand. Like, what do you stand for? And starting at that point of like really unpacking the own advisor's emotional side of thinking through what it means for them to be in this role really uncovers a lot of the strings that we then pull on to help them create their brand. And then once we kind of have that vision, you met my head of creative services here. We've got a whole creative services team here that then takes all of that strategy work and all of that input and the feedback and presents a number of different options to the advisor. And we iterate to excellence from there. And then we really help them create that crisp, concise elevator pitch. How do you explain your brand in 7 seconds or less and what you do, and really help them then put their marketing strategy together. Each of our advisors gets consultation with our advisor marketing team to create a marketing growth plan. And in that marketing growth plan is where we lay out, like, what do we want to do this year? How many new clients do we want to help this year? How many new assets do we want to bring in? Where do we want to serve those people? And how do we think we can go about getting it? And then it's really all about just accountability and checking in and execution. It sounds simple. It's not. As you know, there's a lot of work that goes into the creation of a brand and then ultimately getting it out the door for others to see.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're doing and you're helping them with, especially through this creative services team, is you are looking at each advisor as a business. And
Yes.
each of those advisors, as they're building their own business, they have got to really hone in on their messaging. And so I'd love to kind of parlay that into this next question. When you think about expectations changing, you think about modern investors, meeting them where they are, and the differentiation that an advisor can share in their own message. Because when you think about it, at the end of the day, the services they're providing is, hey, I'm going to help you allocate your portfolio. I'm going to help you with a financial plan. And then you have to figure out what goes around that. What's on the periphery of those messages that are the differentiating aspects. So how can you create that peripheral, the differentiation, and align that with these evolving needs of modern investors?
Yeah, I think the expectations of a financial advisor have changed so much over the course of even just the last decade. At one time, your financial advisor was a stock picker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they started and ended, and they would invest your money. And then we moved into the whole financial planning era where people started doing financial plans. I think it's actually moved even beyond that now. Those are just table stakes, and the investment management piece is actually very commoditized at this point. Now the investor expectations have changed, and advisors have to keep up with those changing expectations. The service that you provide has to be holistic. And what I mean by that is it can't actually just be about the money, and it can't just be about the finances. What we have found is that the expectation of the investor is such that they want you to actually be their coach. They want you to almost be their therapist on things that are important to them. And that could change for every investor. For some, it might be their family. For some, it might be traveling and vacations. For some, it might be buying 20 homes. Like, whatever it is that the investor wants to be delivering for their future, you almost have to meet them where they are. So having the suite of tools and services to back up those requests is one thing, but then having the acumen and the wherewithal to be that therapist and be that coach is something that I think doesn't necessarily come 100% naturally. So getting the training on how to be a better coach to your clients, and then also thinking through personalization in a much different way. So it's not just personalization of, oh, client A and client B or Mr. and Mrs. Client ABC want to achieve this goal, and this goal. It's like, okay, but what's important to them? Like, are there things you can be doing from the investment perspective that will meet their own values? How can you leverage technology today to hyper personalize the things that you're doing at scale so that you're not actually having to personalize everything that you do? So I think there's, two sides of the coin. There's investor expectations have changed. And in the same vein, on the flip side of the coin, you have to deliver to those new investor expectations, but doing it in a way that's scalable for your business.
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Nomi is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, Nomi helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at nomi.com. Yeah, there is so much there. And I think for everyone listening, whether they're a wealth manager, an investor, thinking about this future, you think about the role of digital and technology, understanding that expectations have evolved where people are looking for more holistic support, that there needs to be more training in order to deliver on this promise of personalization. You've done a lot of work with companies through these different eras of wealth management. What have you seen that works best for advisors to gather that information? Which types of technologies and what types of training mechanisms have you put in place that help them scale so they can meet this demand where it is right now and harness it to grow?
I mean, I would ask the same of you because you're doing that on a daily basis, right? We've been deploying new technology integrated fully into our tech stack for a while. And the premise of RFG was really like, let's build this amazing operational structure so that independent advisors can focus on what they should be focusing on, which are the value added activities, and not worry about the rest. So with that comes all the new tools that, you're seeing flying around, like the AI tools that we're using now to not only find out more about your clients and your prospects, but then everything as simple as note taking and having those notes that are taken in meetings automatically integrated into your CRM, and then taking it a step further and having it create follow-up tasks that kick off workflows within the CRM. So it's not having to physically do that work yourself because the technology can take care of it for you. So those are just some ways that I think that we're able to leverage some of the newer technology to help our advisors deliver. And to your point, like I have been on all sides of this business, and you mentioned, Hightower, for example. Some advisors branded themselves Hightower and some of them didn't. And the same thing holds true here at RFG. Some advisors brand themselves RFG and some of them do not. Would it be easier to just have everybody branded the same way? The short answer to that is always yes, because from a scaling perspective as an organization, it's easier to promote one brand than it is to promote 100 brands. But then that brand doesn't necessarily speak to the person, the advisor, their business, because we want to amplify their business. We are not trying to financially engineer their business to be part of RFG. We know they went independent for a reason. We know that they want to own their own entity and create their own enterprise value. And in order to do that, they need to have their own brand. So, there's been a lot of conformity, I think, in the industry for independent advisors. And while I think it's great for some, for those that don't want to conform and really want to keep their individualized identity for their brand, it's really important to have a partner that supports you in that effort and that can help you along the way.
Yeah, I love that. And that goes right back to what you were talking about with respect to using the creative team to really highlight the differentiation. One of the things I know that RFG and you have been very involved in is the opportunity of women. So you think about women and next gen clients and diversity. We all know the stats. It seems like the number keeps going up. It was 10 trillion, the McKinsey number. Now
it's 30.
It keeps going up and up, higher and higher from there. So I know that you've done so much work with respect to that and Strong Her Money and women in finance in the next frontier. What advice can you give to advisors who want to connect more effectively with women investors and younger generations who want that different breed of financial relationship and might also have a different way of engaging altogether?
So I would say the one advice I would have is don't treat women like a niche. Like it's not just one niche or niche, however you want to pronounce it, because they actually have a lot of different preferences and behaviors. And depending on those preferences and behaviors, you have to meet them where they are. So what we've done is we've taken a lot of research that's been out there. Like Schwab has a ton of research. Fidelity's done a ton of research. Many of the large consulting institutions have done research around women and investing and women investors. And there's a flurry of firms that focus in on female investor behaviors that are out there. And what we've done is we've taken that research and we've identified the ways that advisors need to connect with women based on the different life stages that they're in and based on their behavioral preferences. And then we've built tools around it. So resources like content that they can share, ready-made blog posts for them, social media content, presentations in a box, so to speak, so that they have presentations and invitations and follow-up survey and workflows and automated sequences already built out to attract and then solicit those female investors. So we really have created this Strong Her Money resource center for our advisors, in addition to coupling it with community. And we're in the process of leaning in much heavier to that program itself, hiring into that program itself, because we actually really do believe the research that's coming out saying $30 trillion is going to pass to the hands of women by 2030, which guess what is only a few years away. And many of those women are going to fire their existing advisor, whether they got widowed, divorced, whether they inherited the money from their parents, whatever the case may be. So if you're not getting yourself trained up on this, you will likely be one of that 85% that gets fired. And if you are trained up on this and you are in tune to this, then you have a chance to really win that business over or retain the ones that you have.
I absolutely agree. Reading the same research. And I think that, there are counter perspectives saying, no, you're not, you're doing great. Keep doing the same. And I feel like, okay, guys, advisors, keep listening to that and just, play that card, see what's going to happen, but you're gambling with your business. The research proves otherwise.
And I think too, it's one of those things where until advisors start to actually see it happen, they may not take action, right?
Yeah.
Because we've been talking about this for a while, but until they actually start to feel it impact their business, it might take them losing a few of their female clients to recognize the fact that they need to change their ways. And those that embrace it now are just going to be so well positioned for the future.
Yeah, you have shared so much about exciting innovations that you're working on at RFG, exciting opportunities for this new market. If you had one piece of advice to give to advisors about the future of marketing and wealth management, what would it be? You touched on so much. You touched on branding and differentiation and being creative and treating it as an independent business, finding your niche, focusing on women. What would be kind of the big takeaway?
I mean, I think the big takeaway is thinking about your own self. Like, what do you want? What is the impact you want to leave on this industry? What is the impact that you as a financial advisor want to leave on wealth management? You've put probably most of your career or your life and your love and your money and your, all of your energy into this business What is the impact you want to make? And don't wait. Do it now. Like there's so much new technology. There's so much support out there for you. Be with the right partner. Don't settle for mediocrity. Don't settle for, archaic tech debt from your platform provider. Like now is the time for you to finish off strong. Or if you're just starting out, now's the time to be thinking about what do you want your legacy to be and go and build it.
I think those are all great bits of advice. You are an early believer in what we're building at Nomi as it relates to helping people be known at a much deeper level. And so where we're looking to help is offer advisors an opportunity to make that transition that they might not be trained to do. They might not be therapists. They don't know how to have those behavioral finance conversations. What kind of sparked your interest about what we're doing?
So I think we're very much aligned. Like we hired a chief behavioral officer, right? Mm-hmm. Brendan Fraser, who you know. And when you see people that believe and understand the same things that you value, you tend to want to learn more about it. So when I learned about what you were doing, obviously not everybody is going to come to RFG and have the advantages of having a chief behavioral officer to help train them and understand these things. And I think you provide an invaluable resource for advisors to be able to get this now and build their business for the future with a lot of what we were talking about here today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And this is where we always end the podcast, which is, what is one instance in your life or a conversation that you had that changed your own personal relationship with money?
I think it was when I was very young and my dad said to me, if you don't have the cash to buy something, don't buy it.
What's fascinating is every time we ask this question, it's a memory from childhood.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. Their entire relationship with money, their entire lives is formed in those early years. People, not every time we ask, but most. And so it's fascinating how impactful those early experiences with money are on the rest of your life.
It's so funny. And then, of course, I grew up more and I was like, no, but Dad, some debt is actually good debt. Like you can't buy everything with cash. So there you have it.
Abby, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm so grateful for you giving me the time. Thank you for sharing your expertise on branding, marketing, advisor growth, differentiation. For advisors listening, think about your brand and client relationships. I love the advice of think about you. What is the impact that you want to have? How do you want to change your clients' lives? How are you standing out? Because the more you know yourself and the more you understand the impact you want to have on your clients, the more that's going to come out in your brand and in your messaging. How are you building meaningful connections that build trust and drive growth? And how are you personally part of that message? Drop your perspective in the comments or DM me and let's have a conversation. And Abby, where can listeners follow you, learn more about your work at RFG? You might have advisors who are interested in joining RFG. Where can they reach out and learn?
Well, they can certainly go to my LinkedIn, which is just Abby Salameh. They can come to the RFG website, rfgadvisory.com. Or you can feel free to email me. My email, I think, is on LinkedIn, and happy to help anyone and always eager to hear from advisors and just understand what issues they're trying to solve for.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.